Alan YouTube, welcome to an MR2 video. Yeah. So my MR2 is nearly there. I've driven it and it's definitely not there. So we've got a problem with the brakes and that's what I'm going to be looking at first and foremost today. So I got the car all in one piece for the first time since buying it in October and pulling it apart. I'm still missing little things like toe strap. I don't have toe straps. Some stickers. I need some stickers, but just little things. Everything else is there. I've got my roll bars on, coilovers are on, stuff, you know, it's there. It's good to go. It wants to get on track. Now it is actually going on track in less than 2 weeks, so I want to have a look at this brake issue early, just in case it's something that needs replacing. You know, if I'm going to have to replace a caliper or something like that, I'd rather know with some time before the track day, right? So at the moment, when the car's driving fine, everything else is mint. The LSD works good. It'll even spin those R888s as well, first gear mostly with a 5-speed, but you know, it'll still go a bit, no, it's good, it's alright, but the brakes aren't alright. So what's happening is, I was testing my ABS switch, which works really well, so I can toggle the ABS on and off while I'm driving. Well, I can toggle it off. If I want to turn it back on, I have to cycle the ignition, but it works, it's something. I can toggle the ABS one way or another, but the brakes aren't working that well, are they? So I need to figure out what's going on, so we're going to do that. Right, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to try and replicate the brakes with my precision engineering tool. This is adjustable, I can get more wood. At the minute, so with just a little bit of brake pressure, this one is pretty stiff. But what's interesting about that is, so I've got a little bit of brake pressure on, don't forget. The rear right's stiff. Front right, nah mate, not doing anything. Front left, nah mate, not doing anything. Rear left, nah mate, I'm not doing anything either. So it is literally just my mate who's doing anything at the minute. I can turn it if I put enough fucking pressure into it, but it's not. So I think I'm going to try and increase my pressure slightly on my old engineering tool down there and see what happens. Well, where do we start then? I don't know, to be honest. I was expecting to have one of these maybe not turn. It was a bit weird to start with. How just this one was kind of locked on but nothing else was really moving. Perhaps the best place to start would be to just take all 4 wheels off, have a nosy around, make sure things aren't noticeably kind of rusty or stuck, make sure things can move freely like the front caliper pistons and the sliders, and again at the rear. All the rear stuff is brand new, so it should all be fine. The front stuff, like I said earlier, I've kind of made it a hybrid somewhat of old and new parts, and maybe I should replace a lot. But I think we should do that, clean everything up, and then probably give the brakes another bleed, because I do think it might just be some air. Now, one thing that I noticed whilst I was getting plank ready was I've got some of this to put in as well, so I'm going to do this today. This is power steering fluid. So the Toyotas, these MR2s, they've got electro-hydraulic steering, so you need special fluid for one. You can't buy the Toyota fluid anymore, but you can get this stuff, which is, this meets all the right spec, and it's meant to be pretty good for these. Now this car's got intermittent power steering, so no doubt the fluid's probably never been changed. It's nearly 20 years old now, the car, so we'll get this stuff plunged in. Might be a little bit of a task to run it through and trying to bleed it, but we'll do this after the brakes. Right, I thought we'd bleed the brakes before stripping things, because like I said, I'm pretty sure everything's in good condition. Maybe it just wants another bleed. The rear end was without any brake lines at all for quite a while, so it's possibly just there. The bleed nipples on these cars are tiny, so the fronts are like 6mm, the rears are 8, so tiny little spanners. The fluid that I'm using in this car is this Gulf Competition RF1000. Now the specs are similar to the Motul stuff, but yeah, this is pretty decent. I used it in my MRS last year and it seemed pretty good. I used to use ATE Type 200 before, but this seems, well, it's got higher specs, so yeah, I've moved on a bit. So I can't bleed the brakes myself, and I've had to swap one plank for another plank, but right, are you ready? We're going to bleed it. Right, so the brakes are bled, and if this man's to be trusted, the pedal's now hard and firm and feels good. So I'm going to put the wheels back on, have a quick run down the road, and hopefully it won't dive left or right, because I really don't want to start stripping the brakes. I say we've got that power steering stuff to do today, and I've also got to get the hub off the Audi at some point, but hopefully this fixes it, because I don't want to fucking do too much more. Right, it was 2 tests, one with the ABS on, one without the ABS. The first test was without ABS. As you can see, we had a little bit of a lock-up, but both times I was able to brake the car in a straight line. Now we have got a little bit of a downhill, I hope you can tell. So, I made sure that the braking conditions, we were doing about 50 miles per hour when I braked, 3rd gear both times. So yeah, the car stopped about the same both times, I'd say. Had a bit of locking up obviously with the ABS turned off, but with the ABS turned on, when I was braking I just felt the pedal fighting back at me, and I just cringed a bit and just kept my foot in it, because obviously with ABS you don't really want to be leaving up, you need to let the computer do its thing. So in both times the car stopped about the same distance, and crucially it braked pretty straight as well. It does pull a little bit to the left though when I stamp on, and sometimes, not all the time. Maybe it's just the road camber, maybe I'm just braking at weird points, because we are on the road, we're not on a racetrack, so hopefully it'll be alright when we get there. But I should probably check the alignment again before the track day. We've got 2 weeks before we go anyway, so maybe I've just not got the alignment quite where I want it. But the brakes, yeah, feels good. Now although we fixed the brakes, now just when I was trying to do a 3-point, 8-point turn, or whatever it was up there, turning round, my power steering failed, and I've got that tiny wheel on now as well, haven't I? So we fixed the brakes, let's move on to the power steering. Hey, the fluid is like the black plague that's currently in that reservoir, so yeah, I'm sure we'll have a decent result on changing that. Well, the power steering's come back on, but it is intermittent. That red light was on for, where's she gone? The power steering, it must be in that cluster, but there was a red light on for the power steering just then, but it's come back on now, so I can use it to get back. But yeah, it definitely won't. So hopefully that fluid change will sort it out, but let's find out, eh? Right, we're on to the last part of the video, which is the EPSF, the power steering fluid, electro power steering fluid. What's special about the MR2? If you didn't know, it uses a power steering system a bit like a Saxo VTS and a Mercedes A-Class. I think it's the same, where they have a electric motor powering a hydraulic pump. So you've got reduced load on the engine from powering the pump, but you've also got power assisted steering with a bit of feel. This was right, at the end of the 90s when this was coming out, where electric racks were coming out as well, but I guess this was like the crossover period for mainstream manufacturers from hydraulic to electric steering. This is like a halfway house. I like the steering in the MRS. If you've driven one, you'll know they are fucking fantastic when they're working. This one's very temperamental. So I'm hoping just a change of the fluid will sort that out. Now the fluid that's in there at the minute is fucking horrible. It's really, really dirty. It's located at the front of the car, just next to the steering rack. If you've got plastics, the midship runabout plastics, then you'll need to get rid of them. I've not got any plastics in the front of my car, so I can get straight to the reservoir on the pump. I've got 2 litres of this stuff, which should be enough to let us have a little bleed, because I want to try and flush some of it through, some of the shite, and then fill it up with this good stuff. It's golden. So this was about 12 or 13 pounds each per litre, I think. So I got 2 litres just to make sure I had enough. I don't know exactly what the capacity of the system is, but I'm hoping 2 litres will be enough, right? So where is it? On the driver's side for me, on the right hand side. It's just in here. Let me just pop the bonnet. Right, so there's my power steering reservoir. Power steering fluid, correct. Now, you can't quite tell. You can tell, can't you? That's black as fook. But I've got my method locked down somewhat. I've taken the return line, or the feed line, from the rack to the power steering reservoir, taken that off, and I've drained the reservoir from all its current black, horrible, nasty fluid. One thing that's concerning me slightly, or perhaps baffling me slightly, so that's what his old fluid looks like, which, you know, looks like old fluid, doesn't it, yeah? What would you reckon the new fluid will look like, eh? If that's the old fluid, what does the new fluid look like? Just going to put the little lid back on this, right, and see what colour comes through here now. Oh shit. It's a clear liquid. I don't know how I feel about that. There's not even like a hint of anything, it is just clear. Right, I'm just about done with my flushes. So I've done about 5 flushes in total, or I've flushed what was in the reservoir 5 times, let's say. And this is what we got out. Now I'm not sure how well that'll show on camera, but you might be able to tell that the bottom half of the bottle sure is a lot darker than the top half. And it's getting clearer and clearer up the top. Now we know the fluid was clear, it was transparent, you know. So if you mix that with this, it's not, I don't know how I feel about that fluid being clear, but we can definitely tell that that's looking a lot better at the front. This bottle's about 1.5 litres, so we can say it's mostly full, you know, it's about 1.2 litres in there, which would make sense. Maybe I've flushed it 6 times then, if we'll say that the reservoir's probably around 200 millilitres. That would make sense, wouldn't it? So, yeah, there you go. I wouldn't drink that, but the top half would probably still do some good power steerings, but definitely not the bottom half. So all I'll be doing now is filling up the reservoir and bleeding the system as you would traditionally, just by leaving the cap off of the pump of the reservoir while the pump's going, and then I'll just turn the steering side to side, just let it pass some fluid through. I've reconnected the return line, so everything should be good now, just with the cap off to let air out. So I think, let's see if it works, eh? Right guys, that brings us to the end. So it's been another one of those strangely successful days where we've come out with a better car than what we started with. Hey? So this fluid, I've got over, let's call it 700 ml left, so I've only used 1.3 litres. So I flushed the system off from the reservoir 5 or 6 times, and then I've got my fluid sitting in there. Now with this fluid being clear and whatever that used to be, I don't think you're ever going to get a nice clear in your reservoir. So I can see a lot of people might want to do this and they'll end up flushing, you know, for the rest of their lives trying to get that clear fluid. I don't think it's going to work like that. This is what mine looks like. Right, so I have tidied up the reservoir slightly, but you can tell that fluid's better, can't you? If you saw what it was like before, it was just pitch black. It's still got a tint to it, but I think it always will. Certainly this side of 100 flushes anyway. So my brakes are working and my power steering should hopefully stay working now. I won't know obviously whether that's been successful or not, what we've done today with the power steering, but it can't hurt it. That fluid, I'll show you it again. Come on, that ain't working for anyone, that is it? I mean, if you've got a faulty power steering system and you know you've got old fluid in it, you may as well change it to start with, eh? I don't think there's a lot else can go wrong on them because they're like a one-piece unit. The reservoir's on top of it and it just has power going to it and lines going to the rack. So, you know, if it's not the fluid, then I guess we'll be getting the one off the blue. Actually, the one on the blue car didn't work either. I've just remembered. So that one out there hasn't got power steering either. So it must. I don't know if this is a common thing on MR2s because I did have it on my K21 as well, where I was driving around Cadwell Park one day and it just started being intermittent. But it only ever happened once. It never happened again. So that was a bit strange. But they're a bit of a funky system. Celebrate the late 90s, electro hydro. I think it's pretty cool and it works, and hopefully it'll work a bit better now we've got some fresh fluid in it. The translucent, transparent stuff. Dodgy, a bit dodgy that in it, but we'll see how we get on. So that's all from today. What we'll be doing next will be... oh, I don't know. I just don't know anymore, but plenty of videos at least, eh?